If we haven't met before, my name is Natasha. I'm a director of Diaspora Connect, and I give you information and inspiration on the Zambian property market to help you invest in property in a safe and reliable way. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the diaspora. Welcome back to another video in this series that I'm doing, which is all about building. So if you're building, if you're planning on building and you're in the diaspora, then you don't want to miss any of these videos. Okay, so last week we talked about how to build properly and we looked at the different stages. If you didn't check out that video, then you have to. I'm going to include a link on it below. But today, Itwi has come back. Thanks for coming back, Itwi.
Pleasure.
Itwi is an architect and we're going to go through a Q&A. So some of you sent in questions that you have about building, and thank you so much for doing so. And in this video, we're going to answer your questions on building. Okay, so Itwi, Mwenya in Russia wants to know which other construction materials, apart from cement and concrete walls, can we use to build walls in Zambia?
Okay, well, traditionally we built with sticks and clay, thatch, and you can still build with those materials today. However, today the traditional way of building is with concrete and blockwork
and cement,
of course. And so that's what has now become the traditional way of building, and it's the cheapest way to build.
Okay.
If you wanted to bring someone in to do a traditional type of wall, it'll probably cost you more because that now becomes a specialized method of construction.
Okay.
That said, there are so many different ways that you can build,
Okay.
but there are too many to go into. Sandbag building, I've seen buildings with empty plastic bottles filled with sand and so on. There
in Zambia?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, there are very many methods of building, and it just basically comes back to what you're trying to achieve and how much you're willing to pay for it.
Okay. GFRG panels. This is again from Wenya in Russia. GFRG panels are construction materials made from gypsum and glass and have a lot of advantages. They're widely used in India and Australia. Now, do we have this available in Zambia? And he says that, sorry, GFRG, I know you know what it is, but it's glass fiber reinforced gypsum for us normal people. So do we have that in Zambia?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay.
And there are so many materials around the world. You could be in a certain part of the world, even concrete, for instance. There are many different types of concrete. I don't know if many people know that you can get aerated concrete. You can get a staircase that is so light concrete that you can carry. Prefab staircases and so on. We don't have those here, but it doesn't mean that we can't build.
Do it.
Again, it comes back to materials. If you're willing to import the panels,
that pesky question of money.
Yes.
All right. We've got a question here from Gloria in the UK. And she says, she's asking, is a hidden roof better than a raised roof?
That is a question I think all architects here have been faced with. A lot of people, clients, want the hidden roof feel, because a lot of modern architecture shows a hidden roof.
Can you tell us what it is? I don't know what a hidden roof is.
Exactly. That's there are two things. First of all, people want a flat roof. They'll say a flat roof. They won't even say a hidden roof. And a flat roof would most probably be a concrete roof. Okay. That would be the best way to effectively get a good pitch, out of your roof. And a concrete roof has a lifespan that's not as long as a proper pitched roof. We use pitched roofs here, which I think she's calling a raised roof, because of the region of the world that we're in as well. Okay. Because that plays a part in how we design. And maintenance has also a role to play with which part of the world we're in. Okay. Maintenance is a key component in if you don't just build something because you think it's nice, but can you a building is like a machine. You have to maintain it, make sure exactly. So if
my
you
house
wanted
says a building is like a child.
I hope you feed your child.
I try.
Yeah, so you can it's hard to say which is better because it comes back to design and what detail has been made for that particular roof. Both will work, but you have to be aware of the shortcomings and advantages that
Of
each one.
yeah.
Exactly.
So I just want to touch on what you said for clarification. You said the weather
Yes.
that we have here. Can you say more about that? Is a pitched roof cooler or?
My bigger concern actually is rain.
Oh, okay.
Yes, than the temperature, because the temperature, depending on the volume that you have in the building, how high the roof is, that can also affect the temperature within the building.
Okay.
But you get in Zambia, you get torrential rain, like you get a month's rain in 2 minutes. Just
yes, as we have seen.
Yes, and then, so what happens exactly, and what happens to that water if you've got a large flat roof with all that water coming down, and you don't have a gutter that's strong enough to take that, you know, that can cause problems if your pitch isn't right. With a raised roof, as you call it, you really don't have that much of an issue with that. The water will just wash off. I could go into more detail, but I think, in a nutshell, there are other advantages and disadvantages. But I would advise, was it Gloria?
Yes.
To talk to her architect.
Okay, good answer. So the other question we have is, how can you build economically in Zambia? So for example, concrete kitchens versus kitchen units, single story versus double story, and maximizing on space. So what are those kind of tips you can give the people in the diaspora about building economically? I think that's a really good question.
It is, and it's very broad. But I'll try and stick to the examples that she's given. Kitchens, for example, she says concrete or cabinets and so on. A kitchen, obviously, you need to have shelving, etc. I'm assuming she wants a concrete. She's talking about a concrete counter and maybe concrete shelves.
Yes.
Which would not be as costly as a granite counter with timber shelving, doors, sliding doors or folding doors and so on. So there, the cost difference is quite clear.
Yeah.
The concrete would be cheaper, but is that the look that you're looking for?
Yeah.
It would look it can work. It can definitely work in a certain, if you're looking for kind of rustic feel.
A certain aesthetic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that would be the main consideration with that. Double story, single story with regards to saving space. Even that one, it's a common misconception to just think as long as you're going up, you're saving space. But when you go up, you need to consider that there'll be more circulation space, i.e. the staircase. Because when you have a single story home, you don't have a staircase, and that's a passage pretty much, and it covers quite a large area. And then also, depending on the size of the property where you're putting this construction, the clearance that you're allowed by planning authorities between the building and the boundary, doubles if you're going up, because you need to have that privacy between yourself and your neighbor. So whereas, for example, on the side, if it was 3 meters, now you have to be 6 meters away. So how much space does that really leave you? Which space are you saving? Because if you calculate that 3 meters as an area around your house, it's a bit of a toss-up.
Yeah. But are there any other tips you can give if somebody wants to build economically? I know it's broad, but just maybe some general
design. I think that's the key for me. I think that's one of the most important and simplest things that you can do. Make sure that the design is done in such a way that there are no dead spaces. Everything, and that way it's like a precision vehicle. Everything is where it should be, pristine, and it runs not like the baby.
Exactly. I like that. Another question she asked is Chinese foundation or normal foundation, which is better? Now I have to say, I didn't know what a Chinese foundation is. Maybe some of you also don't know, so maybe you could start by explaining what a Chinese foundation is.
A Chinese foundation would be what's called floating slab. I know that's still technical, but it's basically if you think about your floor slab, consider it as being a bit thicker, and that's where your foundation is. So rather than have trenches where you pour concrete, you have a foundation footing, then foundation walls coming up, and then your slab, you only have a thickened slab.
Sorry,
at the-
I
at
just
the
want
base.
to stop you there because if you want to know more about what Ikwi is talking about, we covered it in the first video on how to build properly, and we've got some images as well to just show you exactly what he was saying. And so that's the normal, what she's calling normal foundation. And so the Chinese one is?
Yes, it would be where you just have a slab. It's called it could also be called a raft slab.
Mhm.
So it's just a concrete base,
Okay.
and then the walls are built
Okay.
on it.
All right. But
I
the question is, which one is
yes.
better?
Again, you know, the which one is better question is very difficult to answer because again it comes back to detailing, and if it's executed properly, both work.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and it's the same case. Even a raft foundation will work. Now, with the planning authority, there's certain specifications that are required, and you might find in certain areas you won't be allowed to put a raft foundation. So those are some of the things you'd have to consider that your architect should be able to guide you on.
All right, but it sounds a bit thin, kind of.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can it hold a structure properly?
I know the concern. I know it sounds scary, but if you consider traditional houses, they rarely have.
That's a good point. That's
foundation. Yeah, they stand pretty much on a rough foundation. I know for a fact also in Zimbabwe, a lot of buildings. I'm using an example close by.
Yes.
They use a lot of raft foundations.
Okay.
For a fact, yes. Okay. So, and they're still standing.
They're still standing. All right. So we have a question from Wally in Canada, and he says, to raise a structure, who needs to do what? What is the contractor responsible for? And do they work hand in hand with an architect? Now, Wally, I'm going to do a video all about who does what when it comes to building and construction, which is going to be next week. So that's going to be next week's video. So please come back next week and then you'll get the full answer to that question. So let's move over to Mary, who's here, closer to home. And she says she would appreciate some advice on how much it would cost to build a 2-bedroomed green cottage in the Leopards Hill area.
Interesting question, kind of question that you get all the time. The risk of sounding sarky. How much does a short-sleeved shirt cost?
Yes.
You know, it really depends on which designer you're using. Whether it's a button-up shirt or it's the top is open and so on and so forth. There are many factors that go to, but let me be serious, there are a lot of factors that go into what a 2-bedroom house would be. Are the bedrooms self-contained or not? What kind of finishes are you looking for? Is it a monopitch structure, double, gabled? What kind of roof are you going to? Are we going for a hidden roof or a raised roof?
Yes.
And
you're going for a Chinese foundation,
there you go.
or
Yes,
a normal
exactly.
foundation.
So all those matter, and they would factor into what the cost would be. So it's a very difficult question to answer off the cuff.
Right, you need a lot more information from the client,
Yes.
isn't it? Okay. Yes. Now we're coming to our final question. This is from Mubanga. Can a foreign company offer architectural drawings on building in Zambia?
Yes and no. The only way that a foreign architect can provide drawings is if they sign a joint venture agreement with a local architect.
Okay.
Because all architectural building projects have to be handled by a local registered architect.
Great.
So there's a fee that comes with them, with the foreign architect signing a joint venture agreement with the local architect. And then of course there are other conditions that have to be met. For the foreign architect to practice on their own without all of that, first of all, they won't even be able to submit your drawings, the client's drawings, to the planning authority.
They won't be accepted?
They won't be accepted.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So it's actually better to use a local?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Because if I might just stray a little bit, you have situations where people download drawings. That happens
what about that?
Yeah. Well, like we said in our first interview, I think a couple of years ago, the architects, everyone tries to go around having to use an architect.
To their detriment.
To their detriment, yes, of course. And even when they download drawings, they'll find that they need to have them adjusted according to local requirements, and everyone has their own special preference, and they need a tweak here and there. So it's almost the same as using a foreign architect, where you still have to come back to the local architect who understands local conditions and is better able, to respond to your requirements in the environment that you're going to construct.
Right. And just to mention that you do have to get planning permission or building permission.
Yes.
Yeah. So even if you download the drawings, you still have to submit them at some stage.
And you still have to use an architect.
Yes. Yeah. Otherwise, it might get razed to the ground.
Yes, and they've been doing that.
And they have actually.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Itwi, for coming back and answering the questions.
Thanks for having me back.
Always a pleasure.
Mine as well.
All right, guys, I hope you found that useful. If you have more questions, then please email me. I'll make sure that all of them get answered. I hope you're really enjoying the series that I'm doing, which is all about building. Next video, I'm going to be talking about the building dream team. And this is going to be answering Wali's question, but it's also going to be telling you who you need in your team when you want to build, which is so important. And again, I'll be basing it on my own experience. So I'm talking about real things here. Okay, so thanks again, guys, for joining us. If you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to share it with other Zambians in your community. And hit the subscribe button and the notification to make sure that you are not missing any videos that drop once a week, where I give you tips and advice and information on the Zambian real estate market. And don't forget also to follow us on social media. But for now, bye for now.